Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope everyone is doing well, inshallah. Today in lesson 13, we will be speaking about the concept. It's the last of the concept that is related to the markings that you find on letters. So previously we spoke about the sukoon, which means no vowel. We spoke about the three harakat, the short vowel, the fatha, the kasra, and the dhamma. We also spoke about the mad, the alif mad, which extends the fatha, the ya mad, which extends the kasra, and the waw mad, which extends the dhamma. Then in the previous lesson, we spoke about another mark that we find on letters with the harakat. And that mark is called the shadda. And we said the shadda, it will double the letter, but in pronunciation, we will stress the letter, add emphasis. Okay. And today we'll be doing the last of the markings that we find on letters that has an effect on the way we pronounce the letter. Okay. So we all know this shape over here that we see on top of a letter, that is a fatha. And I'm sure many of us have seen at some time this shape over here. We saw another fatha added onto the fatha, where the fatha is doubled. Likewise, we know this is a kasra. And all of us, or if not most of us, must have seen, and if you have not seen it, then very soon you will see it when looking into a text, where the kasra is doubled. And likewise, with the dhamma, you might find that the dhamma is doubled. Now, this concept is called the tanween, which literally or basically means adding the N sound. And this is what we'll be doing today, and we'll be speaking about some more. Okay. So if we look at this word over here, baban, so like we always do, we start off with the symbol itself. We see here on the last letter, notice that it's at the end of the word, and it has a letter, has a fatha, and you'll notice that the fatha is doubled, and there is kind of another fatha on top of that fatha. Okay. Look at this word over here. You'll see the last letter over here, the hamza. Likewise, it has a kasra, but we'll also see with that kasra, it has another kasra. The kasra is doubled. The last example over here, you'll see this word. The last letter again has a dhamma, and with that dhamma, it has another dhamma. Okay. So if we want to summarize in terms of the shape over here, we just draw some conclusions. I would say two things. So who can help me? Can you help me out in terms of what do you notice in terms of the pattern in all these situations? First, in terms of the shape itself, describe. Can you describe? It's at the end, right? That's good. And in terms of the shape itself, what would you say to describe how the shape, or is there a pattern? Does it follow a specific shape? Nunation. Say it. So that Tanween literally means nunation. That's correct. Okay. So if someone is still typing, same as its harakat. Okay, excellent. So let's draw a conclusion then. Perfect. Right? The shape doesn't change, it just doubles the harakat. Okay. Okay, with those two answers, and we will let's draw the conclusion. The first thing is that it doubles the shape of the fatha, kasra, and dhamma. Right? So it doesn't apply to the mad, doesn't apply to any other concept. It doesn't double anything else but the fatha, the kasra, and the dhamma. And lastly, it's also important to note that it only occurs at the end of the word, at the end of a word. So you notice in all three situations, it's always at the end. So you don't have to worry about seeing this concept in the beginning, in the middle, besides the end of a word. Okay, so that narrows it down a little more. So let's see what this nunation mean. So there we can see the fatha is doubled. So let's give it some names. This one over here, where the arrow is pointed over here, is called a Tanween fatha. Tanween is what this extra shape is called over here. That's a Tanween. It's an extra. It's called fatha because it comes with a fatha. So that Tanween doubles the fatha. This one over here that comes with a kasra is called Tanween kasra because it doubles the kasra. And this one over here is called Tanween dhamma. So it's Tanween, Tanween, Tanween. But depending on which haraka it comes with, it will add another name. Now, again, why is that important? It will become very important as you further your study in Tajweed, etc. Okay. Now, I want to also add a comment here, and this is for maybe the more advanced students. So you can note this down, that the Tanween dhamma specifically will come in slightly different shapes. However, you don't have to, in the beginning, that you have to know that this is the original shape, right? However, there might be some other shapes, but whatever the shape is, you will know it's a dhamma, right? So it might come in a different shape, but anything besides a single dhamma, anything extra than that, you know it's a tanween dhamma. Okay, so that's just a bit of extra information if you're reading a lot of text and you might see different shapes. But this is the basic and the original shape of the tanween. Okay, let's look at the function. So we look at this word over here, ba, 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 ba. Okay, let's take the same word and let's add a tanween fatha. Let's double the fatha over there and let's see what happens. Okay, so let's do that again. Add the tanween fatha. So let me read that. Baban. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's look at another example. Look at this word. Hasidi. 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 Let's take the same word and let's add a tanween kasra. So on the dal, the end, you see that kasra? Let's add a tanween kasra. Hasidin. Okay. Let's take this word over here. Rahimu. 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 Let's add a tanween dhamma and see what happens. So let's look at the meme. It's a dhamma. Add a tanween dhamma. See what happens. Rahimun. Rahimu. Rahimun. By comparing these examples with the tanween, without the tanween, in all situations with the tanween, fatha, kasra, dhamma, I'm sure we can see that it has the same effect. The tanween is one concept, whether it's a tanween fatha, tanween kasra, or tanween dhamma, is just which haraka does it appear with. However, it has one function and one effect. Can you describe for me that effect? What is the function of the tanween? What does it do when it comes onto a letter, whether tanween fatha, tanween kasra, tanween dhamma? Adds an in sound to the end of the word. Adds an in, the in sound. Add the in sound. Lovely. So we have unanimous agreement. I'm sure everyone agree that the tanween's function, whether it's tanween fatha, tanween kasra, tanween dhamma, and it's very important to note that whether tanween fatha, tanween kasra, tanween dhamma, it has the same function, same effect, and that's one function, that it adds an in sound at the end of the word. And that is why it's always found at the end. Now, before we go on to the application, I want to say something about this, right? So why did they do this, right? So because the Arabs, in the Arabic language, a lot of words, countless amount of words has has the in sound at the end, right? The in sound, which is basically a noon, most of the words ends with the in, like babun, kitabun, baytin, usratun, ustadhun, rajulun. So many times, so they just got tired of writing in. Every time they said, you know what? Someone came up with an idea. I have an idea. Let's not write in every single time. Let's just look at the last letter. If it has a fatha, let's add another fatha. Baban. If it has a kasra, just add another kasra. If it has a dhamma, just add another dhamma, and that will represent the in sound at the end. So that's in summary, that's it, right? Of why the sort of the wisdom behind the tanween. Okay, let's move on to some application. So we concluded that the tanween adds the in sound at the end of the word, as you correctly said. Okay, let's do some exercises. So here we go. Ajaba. Okay, so that's, there should be a fatha on the jim. Okay, ajaba. Let's add the tanween, and now we have ajaban. Ajaban. Muhammad Riza, I'll get to your question later. Ajaban. Ajaban. Okay. Nabatin. Nabati. With the kasra. Add the tanween, it becomes nabatin. Nabatin. Okay. Look at the example with the tanween, dhamma. Laythu. Add the tanween, laythun. Laythun. Okay. Mawja. Mawja. The fatha. Add the tanween, mawjan. Mawjan. Humazati. Humazati. Humazatin. Humazatin. Nuhun. 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 Okay, I'm sure that's very easy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do one example with each letter so that we don't leave any letter of the Arabic alphabet out. Let me just erase this over here. Okay, Bismillah. Shaykhon. 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 Hasidin. Hasidin. Akhidun. آخذ. آخذ. بصيرا. 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 عزيز. 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 نفس. 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 قريشا. 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 قصص. 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 Here we go. فرض. 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 That means compulsory. محيطا. 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 حافظ. 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 Sami'un. 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 Balaghan. 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 Khawfin. 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 Sadiqun. 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 Mubarakan. 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 Hablin. 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 Rahimun. 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 Miskinan. 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 Wujuhin. 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 Nafyun. 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 Afwan. Afwan. That's when we say, someone says shukran, we say afwan. 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 Juz'in. 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 Ma'un. 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 Okay. So before I mention the important note on the Tanween, there's an important note that we need to note on the Tanween in terms of its shape. However, I want to answer that question. So if you're able to read already, you would know that, and that's where the question came up, is that does it represent a stop, right? So the Tanween, like the harakat and like the sukun, like any other marks, it doesn't represent anything besides its function. So the tanween represents adding the noon at the end. The fatha represents a, kasra represents I, the dhamma represents u. Now, when you stop at the end of a sentence, there's some rules that apply. You have a certain way of stopping, and then things will change, right? So if it's a mad, you'll pronounce it as a fatha, for example, those type of things. So, but that is a study completely on its own. So that's a lesson completely on its own. I will upload that lesson outside of this course later on how to stop at the end of a sentence, right? So it's also very important that when you look at the tanween or the shadda or the fatha, the mad, all those concepts, is to focus on its function, only on its function, and stopping and how to stop at the end of a sentence, anything to do with stopping, is a lesson on its own. Okay, I also want to mention something important about the tanween fatha, right? So like in English, you get silent letters, right? Like knife. That one always gets me. Knife. What other subtle? You get these silent letters. Kneel. And it goes on and on. Tsunami. No. Yes. So in Arabic, and especially in the next lesson, we are really going to see a tsunami of silent letters. We're going to start introducing the silent letters in Arabic and how it works. But in here, we're going to introduce one. The tanween fatha, in this example here, ahadan. Ahadan. This one here, afwan. We know that word, afwan. And here, basiran. Basiran. These are all tanween fatha. Okay? Now what happens is, if you look here at the end of the word, and that's where the tanween fatha happens, in the text, you will always see this alif over there. Likewise, you'll see an alif after the tanween fatha. Now that alif is a silent alif. Now, if you ask an English teacher, they'll tell you, yes, although silent letters, yeah, really, it doesn't have a function, right? However, it does kind of have some function, whether it's trying to tell you something or it's trying to tell you how to pronounce the word, even though it itself doesn't have a pronunciation, it does have a function. Now, this extra alif here does have a function in a very specific situation that we don't have to know about now. But all you have to know is that when you see that it's a silent alif, it has no function, it's not a mad. So you're not going to say ahada or anything like that when you're reading in a sentence. You're going to ignore it. It will come in handy when we're going to learn about stopping, how to stop. But generally, that alif is just there. They put it there. Now, if you want to ask why, okay, look, why they put it there? Why don't they just take it away? Right? When you go into those questions, like asking, okay, why does the word knife have a silent K? Right? You will find an answer. I mean, if you go look, you're going to find an answer. But I promise you, after finding that answer, you're going to like, okay, how can I unknow that? How can I unlearn what I just learned? Because it's not interesting for everyone, right? It's going to be boring for most people learning why this word has a silent K, why. So what we want to focus on is the application, although there are reasons. Now, the application is telling us with a tanween fatha, most of the time, 95% of the time, you're going to see a alif mad or a mad there, but you will ignore it. It's a silent letter. So you'll still read ahadan, afwan, basiran. And here's more examples. Look here. Now, if you look at the top words, those are semi-cursive letters. The dal, the waw, and the ra, semi-cursive. So that's why the alif is not attached. However, the alif might be attached to the kha, to whatever letter. The letter is not semi-cursive, but the alif still has no pronunciation. It's still silent. So this is still shaykhon. Okay? And this is still rahiman. Rahiman. Can you see? Not mana or anything. Because like I said, you focus on the tanween. There's a tanween, so I need to add the in, and the alif is silent in the tanween fatha. Mubarakan. Mubarakan. The alif is silent. So this normally confuses a lot of people, because why the tanween fatha, why not tanween kasra, why tanween dhamma? It has reasons. The Arabs has a reason. It's go back to even poetry, how they used to prefer to end the sentence, and then this alif mat came in. Long story, we don't want to know the details now. We don't want to know actually details at all. It's just that with the tanween fatha, you will get an alif that you don't pronounce except in a very specific situation, which we'll speak about at another time. But even if you don't know that situation, it's fine. You just read the tanween like this, right through, no problem. Okay. This is tanween fatha. So the tanween fatha, there's the side of alif at the end. So what I'm going to do, so we first done the tanween, how it's pronounced, right? And then I added this, because if I added this in the beginning, it's going to be very confusing for those who are learning for the first time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit when I share the summary of the lesson, all the words with tanween fatha, I'm going to add the alif, and I'm going to make it gray so that you're reminded that it's silent, so that when you practice, and that is how you will get used to it. When you start to see enough examples, you will know, okay, just completely ignore that alif. Okay. Now we're going to move on to a lesson. Firstly, can I ask, how's everyone with the tanween so far? How do you find the tanween? Not too bad. Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Anyone have a problem? Also do let me know. We're going to speak about the mid again. So we spoke about the mid before in lesson 4. We spoke about the mid. In this lesson, we're going to speak about alternative shapes for the mid. So other shapes that the mid might take, but the original shapes is the shape that we covered. That's the standard shapes that you're going to find in all the basic texts. Now, when you go on, for example, to reading, looking in the Quran, if you're going to read maybe calligraphy, then you're going to get a lot of different shapes, right? So now, initially, I wasn't going. It wasn't the plan wasn't to include this in this course because it's something that it's secondary because we learned the original shapes. I don't like to learn secondary things in a basic course, but without this, you really will not be able to read the Mus'haf at all, right? You're going to be very confused. So that's why I had to put it in. But anyway, inshallah, it's going to be easy because we understand the mad so far. It's going to be very easy. Now, let's start with the alif mad. Now, before I speak about the alif mad, I want to say something related to the alif mad. So I've seen this advert about this. It was a movie, right? So I haven't watched the movie, and I'm not promoting the movie in any way, but I saw the adverts, right? So it was about the scientists. They came up with this idea, or the scientists came up with this idea. Hey, human beings are too big. I'm going to come up with a machine, something that if someone put it on, they will shrink to an insect size. So basically, you want to create a mini version of a human being. Well, he just thought, okay, if this human is so small, he can fit him in any way, he can steal things, whatever. But here's the thing, I think actually they were got inspired. Ant-Man is the name of the movie. I think they were actually inspired by the Alif because the Alif has a mini version, right? So I don't know who came up with this. It must be a long time ago. But basically what happened was the Alif mad, all the mad letters are the function is very simple and it's very monotonous, right? And it's very uniform. It just extends and that's just e and u, right? It doesn't have many types of pronunciations, just e and u. So what happened was, if you're writing a sentence and you have all the time mad, it's the same letter pronouncing all the time, it takes so much space and it has such a simple function. So they kind of just came up with like, someone came up with the idea, I'm going to make a mini version, each one of this mads, right? And I'm just going to slip it in anyway. Takes up less space. So that's what happened. Now let's see. So if you look at the alif mad, we said it takes the shape of a mini alif. So look at this word over here. And all these examples I'm going to use in this one is found in Surah Fatiha. So you go back to Surah Fatiha again and you take note of this. So let me read this for you. Alamina. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alamina. Okay. Look over here. Alif mad is gone. There we go. So you can see how that mini alif was fit in there after the ain. However, instead of taking a whole alif, they just put that miniature there, and that became alamin. So look here. So this is a, and this is also a. The same word, absolutely no difference. The one mad is not shorter than the other one or longer than the other one. It's the exact same. It's just written differently, right? So that's alamina. Learn another example. Rahmani. Rahmani. See the alif mad by the meme? There's also Surah Fatiha. Ar-Rahmani. You'll see it's written like this. Ar-Rahmani. Rahmani. So this ma and this ma is the same ma. No difference. Okay. Maliki. Maliki. And here we go. Maliki. So this ma and that ma is the same ma. Maliki. Okay. So the alif mad may appear in words as a mini alif. Now, it's not saying that it's always going to appear this mini alif. It's not a complete replacement. It just depends sometimes. And that's, we can't really determine the reason behind each time why they use it. Sometimes it has various reasons, right? It's impossible to determine the reasons, but at the end of the day, its application is quite simple. You just have to get used to seeing that mark. Okay, that's a mid. Now, let me speak about something that, and I've gotten some questions about this, a few questions actually about this. It's actually I think this is what confused people the most. Okay. The fact that this baby alif, I don't know if you remember, we spoke about the Hamza before. We said the Hamza is a very sneaky letter. It likes to find itself on top of other letters. For example, the alif, the waw, the ya, the mad letters. The Hamza like to use those letters as a base and as a housing, and it sits on that letter. But once the Hamza comes on top of those letters, you ignore that letter and only pronounce the Hamza, right? That's what we spoke about in the letter Hamza. Now, the thing with the baby alif, or call it the mini alif, it's the exact same thing. The mini alif, because it's so flexible, it finds itself anyway, sometimes on top of letters, sometimes in between next, but most of the time, you'll find it next to the letter, like we saw before. But the other most common shape that you might find, the alif mad, the baby mad, and that is on top of a ya, and the ya will have no dots, right? So people get confused. What's going on here? What is that? Ya? Just remember what we spoke about with the hamza, and then you will not be confused, right? So let's look at an example. So this is huda, huda, the mad. You see here, but this is how that word will be written. Huda, huda. So this da and this da is exactly the same da. Can you see how the alif mad, the mini alif, is so tricky? It sits on top of the ya and confuses you, thinking that you have to pronounce the ya, but actually the ya is as if it don't exist. It's just a base. Okay? Asa, asa. Here we go. Asa, asa. That saw and this saw is the same saw in pronunciation, right? Now let me tell you something. If you, for those who want to maybe get a glimpse of what these things are about, this word over here, asa, means stick. It means stick. This word over here is a verb that means disobey. Asa, asa. So sometimes when the word is a verb, then they will use the ya as a housing for the alif, but it's still asa. And here we have asa, but this is a noun, which means stick. Now, if I am pronouncing the word asa, you will not know any difference. But in writing, you will know a difference. Right? That if you want to go into the detail why. But in terms of application, you absolutely do not have to know any of those things, none of that. You just need to know if you see the alif on top of a letter, end of story. Here we go. Duha. Duha. So in the Quran, in Surah Al-Duha, you'll see actually the first few verses have a lot of these. Duha. So that ha and this ha is exactly the same ha, but it just looked different. But they didn't leave you like that. They gave you signs there. There's the alif on top of the Okay, so first let's I want to go three very clear conclusions because it's so important. The mini alif may appear on top of a ya. Number one. Number two, always ignore the ya. If you see that alif there, read only the alif mad. Make it crystal clear. Now, before we move on to the letter waw, I want to add that You might find some other situations where we all might be confused, where you're not sure if this is a alif or a ya. For example, sometimes they might remove some of them they might remove the alif. They take the alif away, then you'll see it like this without the alif. But you will still know it's an alif mad. There are many signs, and if you follow the rules and the sort of the criteria, the guidelines that I spoke about in the mad lesson about how to identify a mad letter, if you go back to that and you really focus on memorize that, you'll see you'll actually have the tools to determine at any time whether it's an alif or whether it's a ya. Now I'm going to give you an example and we're going to move on, because I'm going to give you a document soon in the next few weeks that will summarize these things for you, how to never ever be confused with a ya and an alif again. Well, let me tell you, if we take this baby alif away here, this baby alif away, I still know that is an alif mad. That the baby alif is hidden. How will I know? I have two reasons. Firstly, there is no haraka on that letter. So it's not a ya or a yi or a yu. It's not even a ya with a sukun. Can't be say, because there's no sukun on the ya. If it was a ya with a sukun, there will be a sukun on that ya. Remember we said the letter mad has nothing on there. So I know that's a mad letter. Okay. So that we said the letter of mad will have no haraka. Now, how do I know that's an alif mad and not a ya mad? Didn't we say the ya mad will always have a kasra before it? So if we know that this is a mad letter because they have no haraka, there's no kasra before it, so it cannot be a ya mad. What must the ya extend? The ya mad can only extend the kasra. So we know that is why sometimes they take it away. And this is a lot in the mushaf because they assume that you should know this, right? That's a mad letter. There's an alif, a fatha before the mad letter. That's a alif mad. If there was a kasra on the side, that would have been a ya mad, because the alif mad can't have a kasra before it. Okay, so I hope that that will help. That will definitely be of help to you. That kind of summarize of any situation that you might find yourself in. You'll be able to get yourself out of that by understanding that part that I just said now. Okay, we want to move on to the waw mad. The waw mad, just like the alif mad, has a mini version. Okay, so let's look. We said the waw mad has a mini version. Look at this example. Lahu. There's a hu, the ha, and then extended hu, waw mad. Now you might find it like this. Lahu. Now that hu and this hu is the same hu. It's just that the waw, the waw mad became a mini version, and it's there sitting there at the end. It's telling you need to extend that hu to become hu. Rasuluhu. Rasuluhu. Can we see that hu and this hu is pronounced the same? So it's the same thing. Let's look at a final example of the waw. Qawmahu. Qawmahu. You see that hu and this hu is the same one, except that the waw is now in a mini version, is there at the end. Okay, so the waw mad may appear as a mini waw. And I want to say this to make it even much easier for you. This waw mad, 98% of the time, this version, this mini version, will appear 98% of the time, approximately. It will appear at the end of a word, and it will appear after the letter ha. As you see it there, as you can see, it's all the same example, all kind of the same endings. And this is normally how it appears, after the letter ha, and it's at the end, right? So it's not really difficult to get used to. Wherever alif saghira comes, are we going to want to elongate the word for 2 counts? Yes, yes. That's mini alif, or the mini wa, or the mini ya. It's as the big alif itself. Like I said, they just done that for mostly maybe for summary purposes, to make the text shorter. As you can see, this saves a lot of space. It does save space, but there are other reasons as well. There are definitely other reasons as well. Now, I want to speak about the Yamad. Now, what happens? Remember, I said they were trying to look for, they made mini versions because they really wanted to summarize the shapes instead of having the text, instead of having all this big, same shapes that have such basic functions. Why not just make mini versions? Now, I don't know what, maybe whoever was coming up with the shapes had a bad day, but this is what he came up with the mini version of the letter Ya. Now that does not obviously does not look like a mini Ya. It looks more like a nose or like a crocodile's mouth. But anyway, basic. The letter Ya might appear as this shape over here. Look at an example. Here we have bihi. It might appear like this. Bihi. So this he and this he is exactly the same thing. And I don't know if you're noticing, but if you follow with the example I'm doing now, you'll see that the year, this shape of the year follows the same pattern with the wow, the mini wow, that it always appears at the end and it's going to be after that letter ha. Another example, rizqihi, rizqihi. So that he is exactly that he. Mithlihi. And here we go. Mithlihi. So this he is exactly like that he. Right? So the yamad may appear in this shape, whatever that shape is over there. You won't confuse it. You will know. You will get used to it very quickly. And it's the same yamad. It will still have a kasra before it, and it will mostly appear at the end of a word. Okay. So let's do some examples quickly. So here we can see, here now there's both. There's an alif mad and a ya mad. هذه. This means this. هذه. ها هذه. هذه. Can you see? It's as if we are using the mads, except that that is how they use these things. So in fact, that word specifically, it will always be written like that. Even if they don't have the mad shapes, sometimes they write this without the mad shapes. Like when you write in Arabic today, when you write this word, you write it without the mads, but you still pronounce it as hadihi. That's why it's very important, this rule specifically, especially when learning Arabic as well. That's why I did not want to leave it out. It's one of the most important things when reading Arabic. Otherwise, you're really going to be clueless, because otherwise you will read this word as hadihi. Hadihi. Anyway, here we go. Samawati. 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 Rusuluhu. 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 Rusulihi. Rusulihi. Yamad. Here we go. Very common word. Ila. 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 Here we go. Very common word. Ala. Ala. And here we can see this is the alif, the mini alif coming on top of the letter ya, right? And confusing everyone. But like I said, remember we spoke about the hamza, about using letters as a base, but that letter is totally irrelevant. Here we go. Ala. Ala. Okay, here we go. Risalatihi. 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 It's the same mad, not longer, not shorter. Here we go. Surah Tabarak. Tabarak alladhi. If you look in Surah Tabarak, you'll see it written like this. Tabaraka. 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 That brings us to the end of the lesson. Let me know